education
Absolutely.
and outreach with this
Absolutely.
legislation. I'm going to go over, but I'm going to give Mr. Mercer the opportunity to speak before I go over some of the general questions that I'd like all of you to answer.
Excuse me, I wasn't prepared to speak today. I didn't write anything because I just got a memo yesterday about this. So I was just to come down here and listen and comment on something.
Okay. Well, you can stay on the panel. If you don't have anything that you would like to say, I would like to ask the panel questions. So since you are an artist, a manager of a shop in the District of Columbia,
Yes.
maybe you can answer some of the questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Now, it was mentioned earlier testimony for the cleansing process, just a combination of soap and water. Is that what all of you use before you tattoo or body pierce?
Well, I wanted to, something I heard in one of the previous people's testimony, how do you sterilize the skin? Skin can't be sterilized. To sterilize something, you have to put it in an autoclave and, steam it at, I think, 260 degrees. So if we threw your arm in the autoclave and steamed it at 260 degrees, there would be nothing left to tattoo, unfortunately. So you're not actually
the
sterilizing the
sterilization
skin.
process like before surgery.
Right. Well, you're asking about skin prep, and basically how do you prep the skin? How do you clean the skin before the procedure starts?
Someone mentioned sanitation versus sterilization.
Exactly.
Is
You can't sterilize the skin, so that's a clarification there.
So you can sanitize.
What you
the
can do
skin.
is produce an aseptic environment. And an aseptic environment has the lowest potential for harboring microbacteria and microorganisms.
Thank you.
My shop,
And
we
what
use
is used?
alcohol and an antibacterial soap in that order. So the skin is swabbed with alcohol and then cleaned with antibacterial detergent.
We typically we prep with alcohol, and then you use the glycerin soap that's tattoo soap, which you use throughout the process, which keeps the area clean while you're tattooing. Surgeons don't sterilize the skin either before they start. It's just not done.
Well, are you familiar with the solution that the doctor was speaking of?
I actually wasn't here during his testimony, so I'm not sure.
It is a surface prep.
Iodine or something?
It's called what, chlorhexidine?
Yes, and basically ensures an aseptic environment. on
Would
the
you
skin.
recommend that be used?
It is as good as an alcohol and antibacterial soap combination for reducing the amount of microorganisms present on the skin.
And with regards to a signed release form, what is stated in a release form that someone would sign before they receive a tattoo?
What would you like to know?
Do you give any warnings of possible side effects or?
I am not pregnant. I am free of communicable diseases. I have truthfully represented to employees and agents and representatives that I am at least 18 years of age. I understand that it is not reasonably possible for the representatives and employees to determine whether or not I might have an allergic reaction to the dyes, pigments, or processes used in my tattoo, and I agree to accept the risk that such a reaction is possible. I am not allergic to topical ointments. I am allergic to the following topical ointments. I understand that infection is always possible as a result of obtaining a tattoo, particularly if I do not follow up with proper aftercare of my tattoo, and that infection is more likely in those with a compromised immune system. I have received written instructions advising me of the proper aftercare of my tattoo, and I understand the absolute necessity to follow those instructions. The tattoo process may be an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours. The healing thousands of times longer. You have a 3 to 4 week healing process. You have a 1 hour procedure. That 1 hour procedure is conducted under the controlled environment of a tattoo studio. The healing process we do not have control over. That is in the hands of the client. They walk out the door, we lose control of that environment. That is where they are susceptible to infection. Not in the studio, under controlled conditions, but outside of the studio, in their own environment. That is where they are most susceptible to infection.
Is your form similar?
I'm looking at his, and there's sort of like a checklist. The things that we have on our release form ask if you have epilepsy or a heart condition. Other than that, if you have a communicable disease, or it says if you have any other condition that you need to consult your doctor before coming in to get tattooed from us. Any kind of medical condition, you need to consult your doctor. It's not up to us to decide. But the only other, warning it says is that, some people do have, a very small percentage of people have allergic reactions to certain pigments. And that is something that, we can't guarantee. We don't know that person's body chemistry.
So if any of you, if that is, and do you have any release forms?
I don't have
That's
anything.
I have one on my computer.
I'm asking, do you give the clients?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
So
They're basically the same, though. They basically all the same. They might be just rearranged in a certain order, but they all say the same.
It is fairly industry standard to have
Yeah.
those.
So if anyone checks off that they have they're allergic to something, or if they have a particular illness, you will not administer a tattoo
No.
unless they have their doctor's permission.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And with regards to the pigment, was that outdated, the nickel or iron?
Absolutely, and I'd
based-
also like to point out that Dr. Paul Howard with the FDA, and he is at the National Center for Toxicology Research, has been studying the chemical composition of tattoo ink since 2005. This is an ongoing study, so the previous doctor's statement that the FDA do not know what is in tattoo ink is false. They have currently 6 years' worth of records.
So all the tattoo ink currently is FDA approved?
No, ma'am. The FDA is currently investigating the chemical composition of tattoo ink. They have not reached any conclusions. Their methods are questionable. However, that's for another discussion.
What about what about the testing of the actual artists? Are they tested for any diseases?
It is not necessary to test an artist. It is not necessary to refuse a client because they have a blood-borne communicable disease. We use universal precautions. Each person in the equation is treated as already being infectious, regardless of their HIV, their hepatitis status, regardless of the artist's HIV or hepatitis status, under the correct conditions, industry standard precautions, there is minimal risk of infection.
And as stated in earlier testimony, I'm trying to get to the level of training and expertise an individual artist has. What would you recommend be the ideal number of hours of training, or should there be a test to see the skill level of the artist? How do you know? How would you hire someone in your individual shop?
Traditionally, an apprenticeship used to be a minimum of 3 years, and up until probably the late 90s, it started to get shorter because of the dissemination of information, via the internet, via electronic means, more information, larger volumes of information was readily available. So typically an apprenticeship these days is approximately 2 years.
2 years.
Which, breaking it down into the licensure grouping, how many hours of training must you achieve in order to become a licensed artist? I would say approximately 1,000 hours spread out over 2 years, which is only 20 hours a week.
And then should it follow that a test be taken or something be given that you would know that person is equipped?
I think the only test that should be taken to qualify somebody to conduct body art of any kind is disease prevention, cross-contamination prevention. I think the skill level of artists vary completely. There are a lot of people that say they're professionals that are doing tattoos at a level that I don't think they're very good, but apparently people are coming in and paying them money, and I guess are happy enough with their tattoos.
Right.
But my concern is not the skill level of a tattoo artist. I feel like the consumer can weed out how talented somebody is or how untalented somebody is. But what shouldn't be up to the consumer to weed out is whether it's safe or not. I think that should be the standard, making sure that everybody has a certificate in bloodborne pathogens training.
And there are different levels, I would imagine, of skill and artistic ability, as they are when I think about hairstylists or barbers. There's certain ones that I wouldn't go to, certain ones that I would go to, that do a good job. But there is a standard that all of them know how to do everything. The level at which you do it is one thing, but there's a level that every tattoo artist and body piercing artist should know how to do, A through Z.
The difference is
in a broader range than just safety measures.
Right, and I understand that, the point of that is to try to just create a baseline standard. But the difference between this industry and almost every other industry is there are no schools. This is one of the few crafts, trades left in this country where it's handed down from master to apprentice. And there are many different ways of tattooing. That's just it. I've met artists that are using machines, they're running a certain way. I couldn't do good tattoos with those machines, but I sit back and they seem to know how to tattoo their way with those machines and do it well. And so, if I were to say the things that I find are my personal standards of this is how you're going to make a solid tattoo every time, somebody else might not be following that and they're still doing good tattoos. So that's the difference between this business and the cosmetology business. It's a true trade, master to apprentice, and I think that if you want to, I guess, create a certain amount of hours that an apprentice has to be schooled in order for them to be considered legit, that's fine, but if the person teaching them isn't very good or doesn't know what they're talking about, it's kind of pointless.
Do you think that the tattoo artists and body piercing artists should have their own, their own board? Separate, or it's fine to include them with cosmetologists and barbers?
Oh, I see, as opposed to one or the other?
Yeah.
I'm not even sure a board is necessary. I think that
once there are regulations and standards and licensing, there needs to be a board. If new training comes up, if new